is Albert with Green Tea House. I hope you're doing well today. Today we're going to start a series on how to get more men to appreciate the beauty and intricacy of hot tea. Now before we begin, if you haven't done so already, please go check us out at the tea shop in New Braunfels, Texas. Casey's over there right now. I'm here with the kids hanging out, and I found some time to do an episode. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so these episodes come fresh to you if you haven't done so already, and also post a comment. So we've talked about this here and there about kind of in Texas, you could say maybe in America in general, but I think certainly in the South, including Texas, there's two obstacles or roadblocks to get people, in particular men, into tea. And one is iced tea. Down here in the South, iced tea is king. And certainly most places that do iced tea, you make it at home, it's different, but most places where you go to get tea, they load it up with so much sugar. And you've seen these franchise drive-through tea companies come by, and they really borrowed a lot from Starbucks, because Starbucks started in the 90s as artisanal high-quality tea, and now it's just morphed into just syrupy, sugary confections that are overpriced and with scores of grams of sugar. And so people are hooked on it, and so you've seen that tea companies, drive-through tea companies, and I'm not going to name any specifically, have just learned from this, and they offer a lot of sweet tea with tons of artificial preservatives and sugar because they know people get hooked on them. So you have that. You have the iced tea culture. And the other one is that hot tea is very foreign to a lot of men. And much of this is not necessarily their fault. You are more likely to do things that you grew up doing. And if you grew up in a milieu where drinking hot tea was not done, especially not done by men in your family, you're less likely to do it unless you have some event in your life that exposes you to Asian tea. And I look at this with things in my own life. Like, I never went golfing because my family never golfed. So it was just something that I never picked up an interest. So it's no way an indictment if there's men in your life that don't drink tea. I think there's just certain obstacles that you can bring up to their attention. That's kind of what the reason for this series is. And so one of the things that you can do is maybe give them the perspective of tea consumption in the world. First of all, tea is the most consumed beverage in the world, and it's not coffee behind water. And most of this is due to the fact that men consume tea. So when we think about America, we think hot tea is for women, and we'll talk about this in a future episode why this is. This is not by accident. But if you look at the entire world, on any given day, tea consumption is certainly drunk by women, but mostly drunk by men. If you're looking at India, Pakistan, Vietnam, China, Japan, Korea, over and over and over, men consume tea. The Middle East, the Maghreb, like Moroccan mint, men consume tea. Yerba mate, even though it doesn't come from Camellia sinensis, drunk in South America, consumed by men. These are drinks that are drunk by men. You think of historical figures throughout time. Genghis Khan drank tea. Tamerlane drank tea. Some of the most virile, strongest conquerors of the world, Akbar in India. If many of you guys watched the FX show recently, Shogun, the shoguns drank tea. All through the shogunates of the 15, 16, 17, 1800s, they drank tea. If you look at the Middle East, Kemal Ataturk drank tea. I mean, the list goes on and on. Winston Churchill, we talked about, his favorite tea was Lapsang Saichong. They all drank tea. But if you grow up in America, in a milieu, in an environment where no man in your family is drinking tea, and maybe you're not steeped in history and don't even know who these historical figures are, and certainly what their beverage preferences were, and you just don't know the general history of tea, it's not going to be surprising that you don't know these things. It's just not going to be surprising. So using historical references might not get them to go, oh, let's go drink tea. I think it certainly helps just to give kind of a global perspective on tea consumption in the world and historical figures that drank tea. But as a whole, this isn't really necessarily going to do it. I think a lot of the prejudice behind tea is just lack of information, something that they've never done, or if they've done really little, it was poor tea that they drank. And so when the idea of drinking hot tea comes to them, they're like, no. And part of it is just they're not acquainted with it. Like if you go up to a person, a guy who's really an experience with tea is maybe iced black tea, or maybe they've had a hot chamomile once, whatever, when they were sick. And you're like, hey, you should really try this yellow tea. You should try this pu'er. You should try this dragon well. You should try this Oriental Beauty Oolong. I mean, there's just like, it's like when someone's talking physics to you, you know nothing about physics. It's like, this means nothing. It's like speaking a jargon. And it could be like, And similar to me, like I don't drink alcohol, don't drink beer, don't drink anything. So there's a lot of different microbreweries, beers, different types of beers. And when people start talking beer to me, it's just like right over my head, because I don't have a reference point. I don't have a framework to really identify with these things. And so lots of times with tea and men, it's kind of the same thing. It's not like necessarily the majority of men don't drink tea because they have anything against it. They just really haven't drank a lot of tea. And there's going to be some stereotypes that are associated with tea, which we'll talk about in the next episode. But I think the best thing to do is maybe step one is sit them down on the couch, do a Freudian analysis, sit them down on the couch and just ask them, why don't you like tea? And lots of times you're going to hear them say, well, it doesn't taste good, or it has no flavor, especially vis-a-vis coffee. But I think the first step is give them the historical perspective, give them the kind of global view that tea is a manly drink. It is consumed disproportionately by men. Now, women pluck the tea leaves in the world. They are plucking about 90% of the tea leaves. But in terms of consumption, it's men are the ones who consume tea more than women. And I think this is a good step. Second episode, we're going to talk about some of the stereotypes of tea, and one of the reasons why tea is perceived here in the West and in America to be drink only by women. Guys, post in the comments. Do you suffer from this, or do you have men in your life who won't drink tea? I'd like to hear from you. Until next time, take care and God bless.